Welcome to Alice in Wonderland. Today I'd like to walk you through my latest creation, which is the story of Alice in Wonderland. So we start our life in Oxford, where the original Alice lived. This is the city park, which is in front of her house. So we're walking out across past the music in the park, the maypole, all the traditional things that Victorian England had, fun park, and out through the Romany campgrounds. And across the River Thames. This is where the story begins. Here's Charles Dodgson, alias Lewis Carroll, spinning his stories to the girls. It begins with the story of Alice and her sister sitting under a tree. Alice's sister was reading a book. Alice was bored until she managed to spy a white rabbit who was muttering to himself about being late. She decided she'd better chase him, so off she went. They came to a rabbit hole. The white rabbit dashed in, and Alice, to her surprise, found that she could fall, and she fell and fell. And as she fell, she noticed all kinds of amazing things, odd things, on the walls around it. She kept on falling until she felt as though she was going to fall to the other end of the world. And there she landed, in a hall with doors, locked doors, all the way around it. Now, of course, we all know the story and the saga about the key and the drink and the cake that altered her size, and so she couldn't get that key and her size right at the same time to get through the little door. She got so upset and was so big in the end that she cried, which created a sea of tears full of small animals. Eventually, after much struggling, and with the dodo sailing by, the dodo called a caucus dance so that they could all get dry. Alice joined in for quite some time until again she spied the white rabbit, and so off she went chasing him again. He eventually stopped when he saw her, and mistaking her for his maid, Mary Ann, he said to her to go and get his gloves and fan from his house. So off she went. Of course, there was something to eat in the house, and she became so big that her hands and arms came out the windows and doors and chimney. But then she discovered that if she ate something else, she got down to a very small size again and could get out of the house and chase the white rabbit. But she was so small, she soon lost him. She kept on wandering through the gardens and through the woods until she came across a whole area of mushrooms. She looked around and looked around, and eventually she saw a big mushroom with a blue caterpillar on the top. He was smoking a hookah. I think he was drugged out of his mind. Ione makes a very good blue caterpillar. After several silly stories, the caterpillar left, but just before he left, he said, if you eat one side, it'll make you bigger. If you eat the other side, it'll make you smaller. Eventually, Alice worked out he meant the mushroom. So taking pieces from each side, she was then able to keep up with what size she needed to be. Off she went through the forest again and came across this interesting little cottage owned by Agnes, who is the Duchess. It was a crazy cottage. The cook used too much pepper. The baby looked like a pig. And eventually Alice left, rescuing the baby, and off she went again. And by the time she got a little distance, she realised it was a pig, so she set it free. Around the corner, the Cheshire cat, who she'd met at the Duchess's house, was sitting up in a tree watching her. a long conversation later, and there's his house, Bob's house in this case. Bob makes a marvellous Cheshire cat. He's mad and crazy, just like the Cheshire cat. The Cheshire cat advised Alice that she should go and see the Mad Hatter or the March Hare or both, and sent her off in 2 different directions. On the way, when she felt as though she was just about to get to the Mad Hatter's house, she was stopped by 2 little round men called Tweedledum and Tweedledee. My 2 stars, Étoile and Stella, make a beautiful set of twins for that reason. They told her stories about Humpty Dumpty, about Old Father William, and other funny stories as well. Eventually she escaped from them, and off she went down the hill and round the corner, and lo and behold, what did she find? She found a table, a big long table, lots of chairs, lots of teapots, teacups, lots to eat, biscuits and cakes and everything else. At one end, the March Hare, the Mad Hatter, and the Dormouse were sitting. Alice joined them for a while, but they were absolutely mad. Eventually, the White Rabbit turned up, and they tried to fix his pocket watch by dunking it in a teapot. Their houses are along the back here. That's the March Hares with ears for chimneys. That's the brightly coloured Mad Hatters. It's full of hats, of course. And then the Dormouse at the end. Broccolo makes a nice dormouse. He's very, very lazy. Off Alice went again, trying to catch up to that White Rabbit. She went in through the woodlands, and quite suddenly it turned back into the hallway. So she made herself small, and at long last she got through the little door that she'd been trying to get through for so long, into a beautiful garden of flowers, except because she was so small, they were huge and quite frightening. So she kept on running through there and ended up in a red and white rose maze. Wandering through the maze, there were funny things in the maze. This odd, mysterious rock garden. And every now and then she'd catch a glimpse of the White Rabbit and keep on running towards him, never quite catching up. And there he stopped his fan again. And eventually she found this most amazing life-size, full-size chess game with all the characters. She kept on running through and out and along behind. She looked up at those huge castle walls. She wondered where she could get into there. As she came out, a whole procession of cards, soldiers came marching by. And there in the middle was the White Rabbit. And at the back end there was the Queen of Hearts, the King of Hearts, and the Knave of Hearts. The Queen invited her to come and play croquet with her. Of course, the croquet mallets were flamingos, the croquet balls were hedgehogs, and the archers were made out of soldiers' cards bent over double. The Queen always won, of course. The Queen then asked her if she'd ever met the Mock Turtle, to which Alice said no, and so the Griffin, who was just nearby, was charged with taking her to see the Mock Turtle and to watch the lobster quadrille. Alice kept on moving. Eventually she got to the palace. And what a structure it was. Huge tall walls, beautiful gardens, fountains, guards all over the place looking after the place. And of course, down in the midst of it was the Queen's house. And on the other side, the same, except in the middle of this one was the museum where all the Queen's treasures were kept. Along the other side, we come down again to where the Queen is holding her court. All the soldiers are guarding, the jury is in place, the accused are at the front there. the Knave of Hearts with his plate of tarts. Out through the gardens, beautiful gardens, which is where the Queen's house is. The Queen has a few things that she really loves and gathers around her. One is her mermaid grotto. She always has her mermaid grotto wherever she is. And she loves fresh fish every day for her meal. And there she is trying to catch something. There's Miss Tiffany. And Miss Tiffany's not going to let me pass. We'll have to vault across past her. She makes a very snooty Red Queen. And of course, she has her own fishing fleet so that she always has fresh fish. So we come back to the court. We go past the guardhouse where there are several of the cards waiting for their trial. We go along and it looks like Alice herself is on trial at the front there with the White Rabbit. But she decides that nothing is going to stop her. And so she eats some of that mushroom again, becomes big enough to stand over them and just decides that they are all just a pack of cards. So she runs out between them and down she goes and escapes back into reality, the reality of Oxford. And that is the end of our story.